Hi guys and gals, Froggy here. This is going to be a video of me changing, replacing the Harmonic Balancer on the car, and I'm going to not give you every little bitty detail. I've already got it up on jack stands. You want to get it up high as you can because you're going to need to swing some big wrenches under there, and you're going to need space underneath the front. And you'll also notice I've jacked it up under the body and not under the front suspension because I'm going to need to be working under the front suspension. So get your car up in the air first off. Okay, wheels off, obviously. You're going to have some room to work around there. And I took the sway bar off. The factory service manual says you can do it without taking the sway bar off, but it's not hard to do, and I wanted to have some extra room to work in there if I can. I gotta grab some lunch now. I'm starving, and I think I'm gonna look at the steering rack, the cooler and the steering rack next. I'll be back. And now the rack has to come out, so you start with your tie rod ends, which of course are attached to the rack, so take the tie rod ends off on both sides. Well, Froggy's back. I've got a question on the steering shaft, which connects the steering wheel to the steering gear. Basically about how to remove that shaft, and also keeping the steering wheel straight, so that there are a lot of things that depend on the steering wheel being straight, a lot of sensors and things like that. However, what I am going to do, I went online and I'm looking at a few different threads about this, and one of the guys did suggest removing the alternator to make it a lot easier to get at that steering shaft. So that's what Froggy's going to do now. I'm going to remove the alternator. It's like the sway bar. It's a real easy thing to remove. And I learned a long time ago, instead of fighting to get around something, it's easier just to remove it. And I have removed this alternator before. So that's what I'm going to do next. And then I'm kind of running out of time on day one here, so that'll probably wrap it after I get the alternator out. Okay guys and gals, Froggy's back. What we've got here is a long extension. I put together a bunch of shorter ones. That's a pinch bolt at the end of the extensions. I've got a socket on there already. That's what attaches the lower part of the steering shaft to the steering rack, which is that big round shiny thing right there. And what you want to do is you've got to take that bolt all the way out, and then you need to spread that little pinch collar a little bit and take it off of the rack. So that's what I'm going to do now. To get to it at this angle here, you need to turn the steering wheel. So you're temporarily going to turn the steering wheel to the, let's see, what did I do here? Turn it to the left about a quarter turn. And then it's going to go back to center after we get that unfastened. I want to show you this pinch bolt. It's pretty loose, and it's got a flat on each side of it, so it really only goes on one way unless you're 180 degrees out. So I think I'm going to I don't know if I'm going to turn the steering wheel back straight or just leave it right the way it is there with a quarter turn on it. Because once I take this off, the steering wheel will spin. I'm not sure. I'll post up a notation, an annotation, if I figure out the best way to do this. but for right now, that's how it comes off. Here's the steering shaft. I just pulled it up high. I wiggled it past a couple of things there, and I put a bungee cord on it. Just keep it up out of the way. I have to clean that up a little bit. It's got a lot of oil over it from the leak when the Harmonic Balancer came off. Okay, I'm back underneath. Right in front of your rack, your power steering rack, is a power steering cooler. This is on a Z06. I don't think you have it on a regular Corvette, but on the Z06 you have a power steering fluid cooler. And I'm going to take that off now. It's just two small bolts, which are, what size are they? I don't know if you can see that. Well, let me take a look at it. Those are 10 millimeter. There, one there. You see this little bracket going up, and one there, which you can't really see because this part of the subframe is in the way. I'm going to take those two off. I'm going to pull it forward and just bungee it out of the way. Okay, there's your cooler. I got it bungeed out of the way. Getting down to the rack. Okay, got to take a little break here. I'll be back. I pulled the boot off of the inner tie rod, well, off the whole tie rod, so that you could see better. Now, this is what I call the head on the steering rack right here. There's two big pipes. You can see one, I've already got it off. This is, I think the top one is high pressure power steering fluid, and the one my light is on right there is low pressure return power steering fluid. Now on the other side of this head, on a Z06, an LS6 motor, there's two smaller fittings just like that, and that's for the power steering oil cooler. So all those four have to come off right at this head here. Okay? That's what I'm at right now. Alright guys and gals, back on it. I took a bungee and I'm pulling that low pressure hose up out of the way of the rack, and I also took the now that all the oil is finished draining, I took that high pressure hose and I shoved it way back out of the way there. So you know, that's what's got to come out, the steering box and the rack. So now I'm on the there's a bracket that holds the ABS, anti-lock braking system. I'll show you. There's two 13s right there and an 18 millimeter, and I think that's it. I'm going to take those out, and that 18 millimeter also anchors the driver's side of the rack, and there's another one, there's a passenger side of the rack. So I'm going to take those three out and see if I can move that ABS module up without disconnecting any of the little lines that go to it. Okay, these are the two smaller bolts for the ABS bracket, and then this one with the washer on it is for the ABS bracket and the driver's side rack, and this is a passenger side rack. Notice they do have nuts on the other side of them, and it's an 18 and an 18, and this I think I told you was a 13. I've been putting these in bags with little notes in them just in case, and I'm also writing down the order that I do things in so that I can just reverse it when I put it back together. Okay, here's a little trick I just made up. I shoved the ABS module up as high as I could. On the top it hits a radiator hose, and it also hits I think it's the return hose to the power steering pump, but you can shove up against those hoses pretty good. And what I did was I took one of the bracket bolts and I caught it. I pushed it up and I caught it in the top hole, you know, the bottom hole of the bracket and the top hole of the subframe. So if it works, and that's going to hold that up there really nice and high. So we'll see. If it doesn't work, I'll tell you it didn't work. Right there is the small wire bundle. Those wires go into the steering box, and they have something to do with they have something to do with Magna-Steer. There's an electrical connection to the steering box, so you need to undo that and then take the end of it and pull it over to the area where you're going to pull the rack out. And actually I'm going to tie wrap it so that it doesn't get hung up when I pull the rack out. So right there, you see I've got it fastened off so it doesn't flop around with some tie wraps. So I'm going to cut those, and then I'm going to disconnect it right there at that blue connection. You're going to have to move some of these ABS lines to shove those. There's a bunch of them that go towards rear brakes. Shove them towards the back of the car. Then there's one here that goes across to the right front, I guess. And there was a little plastic clip that held it down there, and I tried to slip it out from underneath. I broke the plastic clip, but that's okay. I think I'll anchor it back down there with a tie wrap when I put it back together. But this one here, this line is going to have to move forward, but it moves pretty good now that I've got it out of that plastic clip. So move those ABS lines all out of the way. Right there, if you see that tie wrap there, the wire that goes into the steering box, I've got that wrapped around the inner, well, it's past the inner tie rod, but it's part of the steering rack. You just got it wrapped out of the way, so that's going to come out when it comes out. I think the next thing to do is lower the cradle. Let me check the factory service manual and see what's next. Okay, we've got everything tied up out of the way. The rack is still in its place. I haven't pried it out yet. You have to kind of pry it out a little bit, but I want to drop the cross member first. This is called the Crossmember here, where I'm flashing my light. There's 4 21mm. There we go. There's one of them. 4 21mm nuts that fasten it to the frame, and you want to loosen them. They're torqued to 80 foot-pounds, so when you put it back to 80. Now you see this has threads, and then it has like a bullet end on it, a smooth end on it. You don't need to take these all the way off. That's what I'm told. You're just creating some space between the cross member and the frame. So take them down like 2 or 3 turns each, so they all come down evenly. You don't want to do one side then the other side. Once you get them loose, they turn pretty easy. So I'm gonna, well, let me see if I can show you one. There's one that I'm turning now. They're only 80 foot-pounds, so they're not on very tight. Just go around a circle around, and do 3 or 4 turns on each one, so it comes down even. Okay, and then that'll create space between the frame and the cross member, so you can get your rack out. I want to show you something. I had to pop that passenger side rack connection there to get it to move around. It may be because my harmonic balancer is moved forward, and yours may not be that way. But once I pop that out, I think I'm going to be able to move it towards the driver's side now and draw it out. But I want to just show you that. Okie dokie, rack is out. Basically, let me give you some froggy tips on getting it out. I didn't have to take the tie rod ends off, so hopefully my alignment's going to be okay. Not a big deal to check that anyway. Basically, I'd go and get it. First, I popped it out where I showed you. I'll show you again. You gotta, oh, hold on, let me get it. Okay, first I popped it out of the passenger side crossmember place where it bolts in. Then I kind of used a short pry bar, and once I popped it out, I would wiggle it a couple of inches, then it would get hung up on, you know, the passenger side tie rod end. So I'd go and loosen up that tie rod end, figure out whatever it was hung up on, then go to the other side, and it would be hung up on a brake line, a brake pipe. So I get it around the brake pipe, then it would get hung up on something else. So you got to go back and forth and back and forth, and you get about 1 inch or 2 inches at a time. And eventually, once you get the gear out, what I've been calling the steering box, the steering gear out, is pretty easy. Okay? Now, here's why I had to take that out, is the harmonic balancer. As you can see, it's not going to be a problem getting that bolt out. It's loose. So I just got to get a puller and pull the balancer off and start putting the new balancer on. So Froggy's going to put the camera down for a little bit and think about this, and then I'll fire it back up and show you some more. Froggy out. One quick note here. As you can see, the genius, and when I say genius, it's dripping with sarcasm, the genius mechanic that put this back on safety wired it. And as one of my friends pointed out, you can't safety wire a spinning bolt. The bolt and the pulley are spinning at the same speed, so how do you safety wire that? Anyway, the safety wire is still there. So much for that. So don't trust a lot of mechanics when it comes to doing this job right. They might do it right on a, I don't know, whatever the $12,000 cheap Chevys are these days, but they're not going to get it right on the Corvette. I suggest do it yourself. I'm back, guys and gals. Froggy got a little ahead of himself here, and I got the harmonic balancer off, but I'm going to walk you through it. I'm going to show you how I did it. I used a 2-arm puller, just kind of a regular puller. This one will go 3-arm or 2-arm, either way. And I grabbed it on the outside edge, just because this particular puller wouldn't fit on the inside edge. I think the inside edge would be a better place to grab it, but I had to go on the outside edge because this is really thick arms on this puller. I think most of you guys and gals know how to use a puller, and then you just crank on this center threaded shaft. One little trick that I did do, because this shaft would have disappeared down the hole that's drilled in the crankshaft, what I did was I took a little die that I had, just like a little piece of it's actually a bearing installation piece of metal about the size of a silver dollar, and I laid it in there, and it had a small hole in the center, and the small hole in the center was small enough so that this threaded shaft will push against the hole, and that way the other side of this die was up against the snout of the crankshaft. So basically I didn't have to make this disappear down that long hole into the crankshaft. I was just pushing on something that was right there where my fingers are. It was just sitting there on the end of the snout of the crankshaft, and it had a little hole, a little centering hole, because these things like to walk off of center if they don't have a centering hole. So anyway, pulled it off, and I'm going to wrap it for today. It's about 6 o'clock, and basically all I have to do is pull the seal, and then it's install the new seal, install the new balancer, and you know, that could be a little bit tricky, but I'll walk you through it. Anyway, that's it for today. See you later. Froggy out. Let me get a close-up of this. This is from the Corvette Factory Service Manual, and it gives you a good picture of that two-arm puller that I used. And then the little centerpiece is right there, right at the tip of where I'm holding that pliers handle. That centerpiece is what prevents the screw from going way down into the hole. So that might give you a better idea. They actually have special tools, GM tools, and that's a J4181 6-2 for the centerpiece, and a J41816 is just a two-arm puller. So there, maybe that will help you a little bit more.